Welcome, it's Domain Dave with CheapWineFinder.com again with one of the last of the podcasts for 2021. And today we have an old wine that is new. We have the Meiomi Pinot Noir California non-vintage. And the reason I say it's an old wine that is new is for a couple of different reasons. If you don't know the history of Meiomi, it was started by Joe Wagner, who's one of the sons of the Wagner family, who are famous for Caymus wines. Very famous Cabernet Sauvignon, very famous winery, and they made a Pinot Noir that was sourced from the Santa Barbara AVA down by Los Angeles, Monterey, and Sonoma. And it was a huge success. It was selling over 7 million bottles a year, according to what I read. And Constellation Brands bought it for $315 million. And when you sell 7 million bottles, you know that you can kind of make up your money in a hurry. And at the time, this wine was selling for maybe $18, $19. I think it's a little bit less expensive. And the reason I say it's a new wine is because they no longer put Santa Barbara, Monterey, and Sonoma on the label, just California. They don't give an explanation, and I'll talk about that in a second. And it's no longer a vintage wine. This is non-vintage. And I'll explain why I think they're not talking about the same areas for the grapes and why it's non-vintage. And the Constellation brand, I put a link to their brand's page on the website for CheapWineFinder.com. And they've got a ton of really, really good wines and a ton of vineyards they hold. So when they bought Meiomi, they didn't buy the vineyards. And I think it was all contracted wine. And they might have had the same vineyards for a while, but didn't need them when the contracts are up, if that's how the thing worked. And they're probably now using their own vineyards, which, you know, it could be as good or better than the ones that were originally used. Who knows? Just took a sip. And the reason why it's non-vintage is because they probably want to make sure they never run out. They're selling 7 million bottles a year. They need a lot of grapes, and you don't want to limit yourself to one vintage. You're going to need to make a lot of wine, and plus you can always, when you put two vintages together, you can make the wine consistent year in and year out. The champagne houses do it all the time. So it's a way to make everybody, make you know when you buy this wine, you know what you're going to get, and to make sure you can buy the wine, that it'll always be there. It is on the sweet side. I think, what was it? A dry wine is 6 grams per liter of sugar. I think this was 15. It's on the sweet side. It's not all the way to sweetness, but it's no longer on the dry side. So it's going to be a ripe wine, but it's more nectar ripe than a full out sweet wine. I'm going to take another sip. And the thing about the Meiomi always was it was luscious wine. It had a lot of fruit flavor. Not exactly complicated or layered or anything, but it is lush. It is smooth. It is silky. It's not my style Pinot Noir. I mean, if I'm going to have a Pinot Noir, I'm not buying the Meiomi. But if I want a big red wine, and you have people over, you're hanging out, you're talking, this will go down very easy. This is smooth and easy to drink. People who aren't maybe wine drinkers or don't drink a lot of wine all the time, Pinot Noir is sometimes a little off-putting. You have to kind of get your head around the flavors, and this one you don't have to do that. Everything's right up front. It's sweet but not sugary. Take another sip, because it's one of those wines that it's good to drink. Wine nerds sputter when you mention Meiomi. They hate it. I mean, It's kind of the anti-Pinot Noir, and everything that a really good Pinot Noir does, this one does the exact opposite. But I don't care so much, because if I want a kind of Pinot Noir I want, I'll go out and buy it. And if I want a lush, rich red wine, just because it has Pinot Noir on the label, which means 75% of the grapes are Pinot Noir, well, that's fine with me. I'll never want a lush wine, or I have people I'm going to drink it with who I know this is in their wheelhouse, and it is for a lot of people. I mean, when you're selling 7 million bottles a year, if that's still going on, it's appealing to a whole bunch of people. Where I don't think there's any hardcore Pinot Noir that's doing anything close to that volume. Not that volume is everything, but it does mean something, especially when you're trying to run a business. Particular stuff. It's one of those wines you just want to sip. A great Pinot Noir? Nah. A luscious red wine that's easy to drink and goes down easy and is rich and maybe almost too rich. It's almost decadent. You know, I'm not a fan of sweet red wines. You get a lot of like German varietals that are sweet red, and they're cloying. You can't get too many. One half glass and I'm done. It's like, you know, that's what dry wines go down easier. But this wine is one of those wines that you can just sip and sip and sip and be perfectly happy. It doesn't have, too much alcohol. It's only, I think, 13.7, which that's about average for California. That's, you see red wines 14.5 all the time. So there you go. Meiomi, the new Meiomi, it doesn't seem to have the same vineyards. They don't say why they made the changes. I think they should. If you're gonna make changes to it, you should explain yourself, because I got a feeling the changes were good changes, because Constellation Brands does have good vineyards and they have good places they can do it. And I'm not sure if the same winemaker's making it, but they have good winemakers. And if they needed to make sure that it tastes the same every year and that they always had enough so they'd never run out, well, that's okay with me too, because it's that kind of wine where when you want it, you want it, let the small boutique Pinot Noirs do their thing, and I like them too. And that's a good party wine. So there you go. We got one more review before New Year's Eve, and that'll be in a couple days. So stay safe, stay healthy, hang in there, and keep it cheap. And I'll be talking to everybody pretty soon. Bye-bye.